The rain-slicked streets of Seoul's Itaewon district gleamed under neon lights, a chaotic symphony of sizzling street food and muffled K-pop beats spilling from hidden bars. The air hung heavy with the scent of kimchi jjigae and grilled skewers, mingling with the metallic tang of exhaust from endless taxis. Inside Lotus Garden, a modest Korean restaurant tucked between luxury boutiques, the evening rush had peaked and ebbed, leaving Ji-yeon wiping down sticky tables with a practiced sigh. At 28, she was the backbone of the place, waitress by night, aspiring artist by stolen mornings. Her life a quiet rhythm of shifts and sketches, far from the glamour that lured tourists to these streets. Ji-yeon's hands moved automatically, calloused from years of balancing trays, when the bell above the door chimed with an unusual weight. An elderly woman entered, her frame slight but commanding, wrapped in a faded handbook that whispered of another era. She carried no umbrella, water dripping from her silver hair onto the worn wooden floor. Her eyes, sharp as polished obsidian, scanned the room before locking onto Ji-yeon. "Table for one," she said, in a voice like cracking bamboo, laced with the dialect of Jeju Island. Ji-yeon nodded, grabbing a menu, but something in the woman's gaze halted her. It wasn't the typical tourist curiosity or the weary demand of a local regular. This was scrutiny, deliberate and unyielding. As she led the way to a corner booth, the woman moved with a limp, leaning on a cane that tapped rhythmically against the floorboards. The restaurant's hum, clinking chopsticks, low laughter from a group of salarymen faded into the background as Ji-yeon set down the menu. "What can I get you? Our special tonight is bibimbap with fresh gochujang." The woman ignored the menu, her gnarled hand shooting out like a striking viper. Before Ji-yeon could react, fingers clamped around her wrist, pulling her sleeve up with surprising strength. The cool air hit the faint birthmark on her inner arm, a small, irregular shape like a twisted cherry blossom, something she'd always dismissed as a quirk of genetics from her unknown father. "This," the woman hissed, her nails digging in just enough to sting, "proves it. The Japanese Mafia boss is your father." Ji-yeon's heart stuttered, the tray in her other hand clattering to the table. The words hung in the steam, rising from a nearby hot pot, absurd and invasive. She yanked her arm back, heat flooding her cheeks. "Excuse me, you must have me confused with someone else. Please let go." But the woman's grip held for a beat longer, her eyes boring into Ji-yeon's with a fervor that bordered on desperation. "I'm Halmeoni Kim," the woman said, releasing her at last but not retreating. "I knew your mother in Busan before she fled to Tokyo. She worked in the shadows for the Yamaguchi Gumi, carrying secrets that could topple empires. That mark? It's the Yakuza's seal, inked on those who enter the fold. Your mother bore it for him, Takashi Kuroda, the Oyabun of the Kuroda Syndicate, heir to docks in Yokohama, control over half the shipping lanes from here to Osaka. She died protecting you from his world, but the blood calls now." Ji-yeon's mind reeled, fragments of her past surfacing like debris in a storm. Her mother had been a ghost of a woman, single and secretive, raising her in a cramped apartment with whispers of debts unpaid and sudden moves across cities. No father, no photos, just a locket with a faded cherry blossom engraving that matched her birthmark. She'd chalked it up to coincidence, to the loneliness of immigrant life. But this, a mafia boss? It sounded like a bad drama plot, the kind that played on late-night TV. Yet Halmeoni Kim's face held no deception, only the etched lines of someone who'd carried burdens too long. The restaurant's owner, Mr. Park, glanced over from the kitchen pass-through, his brow furrowing at the tension. Ji-yeon forced a smile, murmuring, "I'll be right back with water," and retreated to the counter, her pulse thundering. She poured a glass with shaking hands, the water sloshing over the rim. Surveillance, paranoia. Itaewon was full of expats and shady deals, but this felt personal, invasive. As she returned, Halmione Kim leaned forward, voice dropping to a thread. "He's dying, girl. Cancer in the bones." Words out among the rivals, the Inagawa Kaya circling his assets, his son. "They know about you, the hidden daughter. If you don't claim your place, they'll use you as leverage. I came because your mother made me promise. The invitation's already sent. A car will come tomorrow night." Ji-yeon set the glass down harder than intended, ice clinking like warning bells. "Invitation? To what? A family reunion with gangsters? This is insane. I have a life here, debts, a job. Leave me out of it." But even as she spoke, doubt crept in. The locket around her neck felt heavier, the birthmark itching under her sleeve. Halmione Kim slid a small envelope across the table, sealed with red wax, stamped with a blooming sakura. Inside, a card, elegant Hanzi script inviting the Lost Blossom to a private dinner at the Imperial Tower penthouse. No name, just coordinates and a time. Tomorrow, 8 p.m. The old woman rose, cane tapping as she headed for the door. Curiosity killed no cat that didn't chase its tail first. But ignore this, and the shadows find you anyway. The bell chimed again, and she vanished into the rain-lashed night, leaving Ji-yeon staring at the envelope. The salarymen's laughter now grated, the smells of the kitchen turning cloying. She pocketed the card, telling herself it was junk, a scam. But as closing time came and she locked up, the street outside seemed watchful, headlights lingering too long at the corner, a figure in a dark coat pausing under a sodium lamp. Back in her tiny apartment above a laundromat, Ji-yeon paced the threadbare rug, the city's hum filtering through cracked windows. The birthmark stared back from the mirror, undeniable. A father, a mafia empire. It defied her grounded world of ramen noodles and rent checks, yet the envelope burned in her pocket, promising answers or ruin. She texted her best friend, fingers hovering. "Weird old lady tonight. Think it's a prank?" No reply yet. As thunder rumbled over the Han River, Ji-yeon wondered if the car would really come, and what waited if she stepped inside. The morning sun filtered through the grimy blinds of Ji-yeon's apartment, casting striped shadows on the cluttered desk where her sketchpads lay open, half-finished drawings of Itaewon's bustling alleys frozen in charcoal. She hadn't slept much, the envelope's wax seal mocking her from the nightstand like a forbidden talisman. The text to her friend Sora remained unanswered, probably buried under a hangover from last night's shift at the club. Ji-yeon rubbed her eyes, the birthmark on her wrist a faint pink from the old woman's grip, and brewed a pot of instant coffee, its bitter steam curling up to mix with the faint mildew scent from the walls. By midday, the doubt had festered into a gnawing curiosity. Her mother's stories had always been veiled, whispers of a dangerous man in Tokyo, a job that paid too well for a seamstress. Ji-yeon had buried those memories under the grind of survival, but now they resurfaced, sharp as the locket's chain against her collarbone. What if it was true? A father with power, resources, enough to erase her student loans, her endless shifts, or was it a trap? Some elaborate con preying on lonely waitresses? She flipped the card over again, the Hanzi script elegant and unyielding. The lost blossom returns to the garden. No return address, just the time and place. The Imperial Tower loomed in her mind, a sleek monolith piercing Seoul's skyline, home to the elite and untouchable. Work dragged that evening. The restaurant's fluorescent lights buzzing like insistent doubts. Mr. Park noticed her distraction, barking, "Ji-yeon, table 6 needs more banchan. Focus!" She nodded absently, spilling soy sauce on a customer's sleeve. As closing neared, the bell chimed, and a nondescript sedan pulled up outside, its tinted windows reflecting the neon haze. No horn, no driver stepping out, just idling, engine a low purr against the distant rumble of the subway. Her pulse quickened. Coincidence, or the car Halmione Kim had promised? She lingered in the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron, the scent of sesame oil clinging to her skin. "Going somewhere fancy?" Mr. Park teased, but his eyes held a flicker of concern. Ji-yeon forced a laugh. "Just meeting a friend. Cover for me if I'm late tomorrow?" He grunted approval, but as she stepped into the cooling night air, the sedan's door clicked open silently. A man in a crisp black suit emerged, mid-40s, face impassive, earpiece glinting under the street lamp. "Miss Ji-yeon, the car is for you, to the tower." Her feet rooted to the pavement, the rain from last night leaving puddles that mirrored the city's glow. "How do you know my name? Who sent you?" The driver inclined his head slightly, no smile cracking his stoic mask. "The invitation? We're expected. It's safer this way. Streets aren't kind to the unprepared." Safer. The word hung like a lure. She glanced back at the restaurant's warm light, then at the sedan, its leather interior visible through the half-open door, promising escape from the ordinary. Curiosity won, laced with the sharp edge of fear. What harm in seeing? She could always walk away. Sliding into the back seat, the door sealed with a soft thud, enveloping her in cool, conditioned air, scented with sandalwood air freshener. The driver said nothing, merging into traffic with practiced ease. The Han River's dark expanse flashing by on her left, its surface rippling under sodium lights, like black silk. Ji-yeon clutched her purse, fingers tracing the locket. "So, this dinner? Who's hosting?" The man met her eyes in the rearview, voice even. "You'll see. The Oyabun doesn't like delays." Oyabun, the term from old movies, now real and rolling off his tongue. Her stomach twisted. Excitement? Dread? The city blurred past. Towering billboards advertising luxury watches, clusters of office workers spilling from pojangmatcha tents, the faint hum of security cameras whirring at every intersection. As they approached the Imperial Tower, its glass facade rose like a sentinel, floodlights bathing the entrance in golden hues. Valets in tailored uniforms nodded to the sedan, which bypassed the main garage, dipping into a subterranean level where concrete walls echoed with the low growl of generators. The elevator ride was silent, smooth ascent marked only by the digital floor counter ticking upward. Ji-yeon's reflection stared back from the mirrored walls, simple black dress, hair pulled back, looking every bit the intruder. A soft chime announced the penthouse, doors parting to reveal a foyer of polished marble and minimalist orchids, the air crisp with the faint ozone of high-end filtration systems. A woman in a silk kimono, Japanese mid-30s, posture impeccable, awaited, her smile polite but probing. "Welcome, Miss Ji-yeon. The family is gathered. This way." She led through corridors lined with abstract ink paintings, the carpet muffling their steps. Subtle details prickled Ji-yeon's senses, a security panel blinking red beside a door, the distant murmur of voices in Japanese and Korean, a vase of cherry blossoms that seemed too perfect, petals unmarred. As they entered the dining room, floor-to-ceiling windows framed the glittering skyline. The river, a serpentine vein below. A long, ebony table gleamed under crystal chandeliers, set for an intimate feast. Sashimi glistening on ice, bottles of sake chilling in silver buckets. At the head sat a man in his late 60s, gaunt but regal. His suit tailored to hide the frailty Halmione Kim had implied. Takashi Kuroda, his eyes, dark and assessing, locked onto her immediately. A faint tremor in his hand as he set down a porcelain cup. Flanking him were two others, a younger man, sharp-featured with a Yakuza tattoo peeking from his cuff, and an advisor type, scribbling notes on a leather-bound ledger. No warmth in their gazes, only calculation. "Sit," Takashi said, voice gravelly, accented English precise. "You've come far on short notice. The mark on your arm. Does it itch for truth?" Ji-yeon took the offered chair, the wood cool against her palms, heart pounding like the bass from a distant club. The advisor slid a folder across the table, yellowed photos of her mother in Tokyo, time-stamped manifests from Yokohama docks, a DNA report stamped with a private lab seal. "Your mother was loyal," Takashi continued, pouring sake with steady hands. "She left to protect you from this life. But rivals know now, the Inagawa Kai have ears in Busan. They sent that old woman as a probe, or so we think. Her limp from a hit in '98. Question is, are you here to claim what's yours, or walk away?" The words landed like stones in still water, ripples of implication spreading. Surveillance. The grandma a plant. Ji-yeon's mind raced, the sake's warmth doing little to steady her. Outside, a storm gathered over the river, thunder rumbling as lights flickered once in the penthouse. A brief blackout, or something more? The younger man tensed, hand drifting to his pocket, eyes flicking to the windows. As rain lashed the glass, Ji-yeon wondered if the real invitation was to a cage, and whether the door behind her still led to freedom. The rain hammered the penthouse windows like 1,000 impatient fingers, blurring the Seoul skyline into a watercolor smear of lights and shadows. Inside, the air thickened with the scent of fresh ginger and seared tuna from the sashimi platters, undercut by the faint, sterile tang of Takashi's medications hidden in the sake's warmth. Ji-yeon sat rigid, her fingers tracing the edge of the folder, the photos inside a mosaic of her mother's youth, smiling in a crowded Yokohama market, then tense in a dimly lit office, arm extended to show the same birthmark inked faintly on her skin. The DNA report was clinical, irrefutable, 99, 7% match to Takashi Kuroda. No forgeries here, just cold facts from a lab in Geneva. The kind used for discreet inheritances. Takashi watched her over the rim of his cup, his eyes hooded but piercing, the lines around them etched deeper by pain. "She never told you," he said, voice low, carrying the weight of unspoken regrets. "Eriko was proud, too proud to drag you into the ports and the deals, but the Inagawa Kai, they dig up graves for leverage." He nodded to the advisor, a wiry man named Sato with wire-rimmed glasses and a perpetual squint, who flipped open the ledger. Pages rustled like dry leaves, revealing columns of numbers, shipping manifests from Busan to Osaka, coded entries for Blossom cargo, silk imports masking something sharper, perhaps. The younger man, introduced curtly as Kenji, Takashi's nephew and underboss, leaned forward, his tattooed fingers drumming a subtle rhythm on the tablecloth. "The old woman, Halmioni Kim, she's no innocent messenger. Our sources picked up chatter on a burner line out of Jeju, Inagawa plants feeding her intel. That limp, cover for a tracking scar from a botched hit, but we traced her Kane's GPS chip. Amateur work, but it's how they watch." He slid a tablet across. Screen glowing with a map, red dots pulsing along Ji-yeon's route from the restaurant, time-stamped from the sedan's dashcam. Surveillance footage played silently, a grainy figure in a dark coat lingering outside Lotus Garden, phone raised like a weapon. Ji-yeon's throat tightened, the sake turning sour on her tongue. "You tracked me? Before I even came here?" The words escaped sharper than intended, slicing through the room's fragile civility. Kenji's drumbeat stopped, his gaze hardening. "Precaution, the streets talk and your birthmark's no secret anymore. Rivals have photos circulating in dark web forums, the lost Kuroda heir. If they grab you, it's not for tea, it's for leverage on the docks. Father's empire runs on shipments. Electronics from here, rare earths back. One wrong manifest and it's war." Takashi raised a hand, silencing him, the gesture commanding despite the tremor. "Enough shadows. Ji-yeon, this isn't a debt you owe. It's blood. Eriko saved my life once, in a warehouse raid, 92, when she slipped a guard rotation code to my men. Cost her the seamstress cover, forced her to run. I let her go. Thinking distance was mercy, Now, with the cancer. The Inagawa smell weakness. They hit a convoy last week, staged a blackout on the Han Tunnel, jammed the exits with semis, lost 2 guards, a ledger full of roots. His voice cracked on the last word, eyes flicking to the windows where lightning forked over the river, illuminating barges like spectral hulks. Sato cleared his throat, pushing the ledger closer. See here, the discrepancies. A shipment logged from Incheon, but the plate number traces to a ghost vehicle, registered under a Busan shell company. Halmione's dialect matches the wiretaps. She's the link. Ji-yeon scanned the entries, her artist's eye catching the inconsistencies. A date off by hours, a code that echoed the envelope's hanzi. It wasn't just paranoia. It was a web, threads pulling her in. The possessiveness in Kenji's stare clashed with her urge to bolt, autonomy screaming against the pull of this unearthed legacy, loyalty to a ghost mother or fear of the unknown. The room felt smaller, the orchids in the corner wilting under the chandelier's glare. A distant crackle interrupted, static from Kenji's earpiece, his posture shifting like a coiled spring. "Perimeter alert," he muttered, rising smoothly. The lights flickered again, longer this time, plunging the penthouse into a momentary gloom broken only by the tablet's glow and the storm's flashes. Backup generators hummed to life, sodium-yellow emergency strips lining the baseboards, casting elongated shadows that danced like intruders. Sato's pen scratched furiously, while Takashi gripped the table edge, knuckles whitening. "False alarm," Ji-yeon whispered, heart slamming against her ribs, the air now laced with ozone from the HVAC kicking in. Kenji moved to the window, parting a sheer curtain to scan the riverfront below. Power surge from the storm, but... Wait. His voice trailed, eyes narrowing at a speedboat cutting through the choppy water, its running lights off, silhouette merging with the waves. No wake, no horn, just a shadow slipping toward the private docks beneath the tower. That's no fisherman. Inagawa signature. Low profile, no transponder. He barked orders into the earpiece, Korean clipped with Japanese urgency. Double the watch on the sub-level. Check the service elevator logs. Ji-yeon's mind raced, piecing the clues. The grandma's probe, the tracked route, now this incursion. Was the dinner a lure or a shield? Takashi met her gaze, his expression softening fractionally. "You have her fire. Eriko's. Stay and we protect what's yours. Walk and the river takes its toll." The boat vanished into the dock's gloom, but the unease lingered. A low thrum like the generators below. As thunder rolled again, shaking the glass, Ji-yeon wondered if the real threat was already inside, disguised as family, and whether the next flicker would bring darkness they couldn't outrun. The storm's fury peaked, rain sheeting down in relentless waves, turning the Han River into a frothing beast that battered the tower's foundations. Inside, the emergency lights held steady, but the air buzzed with tension, the scent of wet concrete seeping up from the vents. Kenji returned to the table, face taut. Security sweeping the docks. No breach yet, but the boat's burner transponder pinged a Jeju relay, Halmione's network. He pocketed the tablet, eyes on Ji-yeon. "You feel it now? This world's not sketches and shifts. It's rotations, codes, the hum of watchers in the dark." She nodded slowly, the folder heavy in her lap, a bridge to a past she'd never claimed. The conflict tore at her, Takashi's code of restraint, vowing no innocence harmed, clashing with her independent streak. The life she'd built brick by ramen-scented brick, yet the birthmark burned, a silent vow of its own. Sato closed the ledger with a snap. "Tomorrow, we verify the manifests at the warehouse. Join us or not, but the shadows don't wait." As the light steadied and the storm eased to a drizzle, Ji-yeon rose, the city's glow reclaiming the windows. Freedom's door was steps away, but the web held fast. Who had really sent the grandma, and what cargo waited in the river's depths to pull her under? If you're enjoying this story so far, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. The drizzle lingered like a reluctant spy as dawn broke over Seoul, painting the Han River in muted greys and silvers. Ji-yeon stepped out of the tower's subterranean garage into the chill morning air, the sedan's engine still ticking from the drive back to her apartment. Her black dress felt rumpled now, a relic of the night's revelations, and the folder from Takashi weighed down her purse like an anchor. Sleep had been a fleeting visitor, tossed between dreams of cherry blossoms wilting in storm winds and the low hum of generators echoing her pulse. The city's awakening stirred around her, delivery trucks rumbling along the riverside, the sharp scent of wet asphalt mixing with the faint brine from the water, early joggers pounding pavement under sodium lamps that flickered off one by one. Back in her cramped space above the laundromat, Ji-yeon brewed barley tea, its earthy steam doing little to dispel the fog in her mind. The DNA report lay open on the kitchen table, clinical lines confirming what her heart had half suspected. Blood ties to a man who'd built an empire on shadowed docks and whispered deals. But trust, that was a currency she couldn't afford lightly. Kenji's possessiveness in the penthouse, his sharp gaze claiming her as family asset, clashed with Takashi's restrained dignity, a code etched in his vow to shield innocence, even as rivals circled like sharks. Her own ethics rebelled. No part in the shipments that greased corrupt palms, the manifests hiding more than silk. Yet autonomy felt fragile now, the birthmark, a beacon she'd ignored too long. Her phone buzzed, a text from Sora finally. "Prank? That old lady sounds sketchy. Call me later." Ji-yeon typed a vague reply, then deleted it. No dragging friends into this. Instead, she dressed for her shift at Lotus Garden, pulling on jeans and a hoodie, the locket tucked under her collar. The restaurant opened early for lunch crowds, but as she descended the stairs, a black SUV idled across the street, wipers swiping lazily at the mist. Coincidence? Or Kenji's precautions, extending like invisible chains? She quickened her pace, the river's lap against concrete a rhythmic warning. The lunch rush at Lotus Garden was a blur of clattering plates and steaming dulsot bibimbap, the air thick with gochujang spice and the chatter of office workers seeking refuge from the damp. Mr. Park shot her a sidelong glance as she balanced trays, his usual gruffness softened by curiosity. "That fancy ride last night, everything all right?" She nodded, forcing a smile. But her eyes darted to the window. The SUV was gone, replaced by a delivery van that lingered too long, its side mirror angled just so. Subtle behavioral tells, Kenji had called them, tells she'd once dismissed as city paranoia. By mid-afternoon, a call came through on the restaurant's landline, the old rotary phone's ring cutting through the sizzle of the grill. "Ji-yeon!" Sato's voice crackled, precise as a ledger entry. "The warehouse, 4 p.m. We verify the manifests. Inagawa's ghost vehicle traced to a Busan drop. Takashi insists you come. It's your legacy." She gripped the receiver, the plastic warm from her palm. "And if I don't?" Silence. Then, "The shadows choose for you." The line went dead, leaving the hum of the kitchen in its wake. Curiosity pulled her like a current, stronger than fear. She clocked out early, borrowing Mr. Park's beat-up scooter for the ride to Incheon, the port district where the Kuroda shipments docked. The wind whipped her hair as she navigated the elevated highways, the river giving way to industrial sprawl. Cranes looming like skeletal giants, the salty tang of sea air laced with diesel fumes. Sodium lights buzzed along chain-link fences, casting long shadows over stacked containers stamped with innocuous labels, electronics, textiles. But she knew better now. Those boxes hid the real cargo, rare earths fueling black market tech trades. The warehouse squatted at the edge of the docks, a vast concrete bunker ringed by floodlights and razor wire, the low thrum of generators vibrating through the gravel lot. Kenji waited by a side door, arms crossed over his black jacket, a burner phone clipped to his belt. "You're late," he said. No greeting, his eyes scanning her scooter like it was a liability. "Park it inside. No tails." She complied, wheeling it through the door into a maze of pallets and flickering fluorescence, the air heavy with oil and rust. Takashi was absent, too frail for the damp, but Sato stood at a metal desk, ledger open under a gooseneck lamp, its beam cutting harsh angles across his face. "Here," Sato said, tapping a page. "The plate, K4782, logged from Incheon to Yokohama, but the VIN traces to a scrap truck in Jeju, Halmeoni's shell." Ji-yeon leaned in, the paper's edges frayed, ink smudged from hurried hands. A shipping manifest listed Blossom cargo, 20 crates, weights off by kilos, destinations fudged to Osaka instead of the Kuroda yards. Subtle but damning, human error in the codes or deliberate sabotage. "She fed this to the Inagawa," Kenji added, voice tight. "That Kane's chip? It's synced with a relay here, pinging your restaurant coordinates. They knew you'd bite." Ji-yeon's stomach knotted, the possessiveness in his tone grating against her independence. "I'm not bait. If this is family, why the surveillance? I came for answers, not a leash." Kenji's jaw tightened, but before he could retort, a distant clang echoed from the loading bay, metal on metal, too deliberate for wind. Sato's head snapped up, hand drifting to a radio on his belt. "Guard rotations in 5. Check the cams." Kenji moved first, pulling her toward a bank of monitors flickering with grainy feeds, empty docks, fog rolling in from the harbor, a shadow shifting near a container stack. The screen glitched, static snow, then black. "Jammed," Kenji muttered, cursing under his breath. "Power dip, or they're here." Alarms blared, red lights pulsing like heartbeats. The warehouse plunging into controlled chaos. Generators kicked in with a roar, emergency strips glowing along the floor, but the air grew thick with the acrid bite of smoke. Staged? From a distant corner, flames licked a stack of pallets, orange tongues feeding on packing straw. "Diversion," Sato barked, grabbing the ledger. "Inagawa hit. Block the exits." Ji-yeon followed Kenji through the labyrinth, heart pounding to the rhythm of their footsteps on grated catwalks, the structure groaning under the weight of hidden loads. Outside, through a high window, she glimpsed taillights vanishing into the mist. A van, unmarked, merging with the fog-shrouded pier. No graphic chase, just the cold efficiency of retreat, leaving the fire to draw responders. Kenji radioed for a convoy, his voice steady despite the sweat beading on his brow. "Extract now. Takashi's code. No innocence, but we adapt." They burst into the lot as sirens wailed in the distance, the scooter's keys clutched in her fist like a lifeline. But as Kenji's SUV screeched up, a figure detached from the shadows near the fence. Halmeoni Kim, Kane discarded, sprinting with surprising agility toward a waiting speedboat bobbing at the dock. Her limp, a ruse, as Kenji had suspected. She paused, eyes locking on Ji-yeon through the chain link, a flash of something unreadable. Regret? Triumph? Before vanishing into the gloom. The SUV's door slammed shut behind them, tires spinning gravel as they peeled out. The warehouse flames reflecting in the rear view like a warning pyre. Ji-yeon's breath came in sharp bursts, the ledger safe in Sato's lap, but the clues burned hotter. Halmeoni's betrayal, the jammed cams from a cheap signal jammer anyone could buy. Trust fractured further. Kenji's protection felt like possession, her ethics warring with the pull of blood. As the port lights faded, the hand's dark waters reappearing, she wondered if the next manifest hid not cargo, but the face of the true turncoat waiting to claim her as the ultimate prize. The SUV tore through the Incheon outskirts, its tires hissing on rain-slicked asphalt, the port's sodium lights receding like dying stars in the rear view. Inside, the air was thick, with the acrid residue of smoke clinging to their clothes, mingling with the leather seat's polished scent and the faint, metallic tang of adrenaline. Ji-yeon pressed against the door, her pulse still sinking with the wiper's rhythmic swipe. The Han River's distant shimmer, a mocking reminder of the night's unraveling. Sato clutched the ledger in the passenger seat, his knuckles white, while Kenji gripped the wheel, jaw set like forged steel, eyes flicking to the mirrors every few seconds. "You saw her," Ji-yeon said, breaking the silence, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. "Halmione, running like the limp was nothing. If she's in Nagawa, why send her to me at all, probe or pawn?" Kenji's gaze met hers in the reflection, sharp and unyielding, the dashboard glow carving shadows across his tattooed hand. Pawn, most likely. They use locals for deniability. Jeju ties make her perfect. But the Kane's chip? It broadcast to a relay in the warehouse vents. Someone inside fed the signal. He accelerated through a yellow light, the engine's growl underscoring his words. "Not one of ours. Takashi's code runs deep. No leaks from the core, but rivals buy loyalty cheap." Sato twisted in his seat, ledger pages rustling like whispers in the confined space. "Look here, the manifest addendum. A guard rotation code, 7229, logged last week for the East Dock, matches the jammer frequency we pulled from the cams. Human error, or a tell from one of the new hires." Ji-yeon leaned forward, the seatbelt biting into her shoulder, scanning the cramped script under the passing street lamps. The numbers jumped out, innocuous but damning, a subtle inconsistency, like a brushstroke out of place in her sketches. "New hires? From where? Busan shells?" Sato nodded, adjusting his glasses. "Two, vetted through Halmione's network. We thought it clean. Now, compromised." The city folded back around them as they hit Seoul's arteries, skyscrapers rising like silent judges, their windows pinpricks of yellow against the storm-washed sky. Kenji veered off the main boulevard, dipping into a labyrinth of back alleys where Pojangmacha tents steamed with late-night soju seekers, the air heavy with charred meat and fermented cabbage. No direct path to the tower. This was evasion protocol, a serpentine route to shake any tails. Ji-yeon's mind churned. Autonomy versus this web of protection, her ethics clashing with the legacy's pull. Takashi's vow, no innocents harmed, sounded noble, but it bound her now, a chain disguised as shelter. Kenji's possessiveness grated, his every glance claiming territory. Yet beneath it lurked a fear she recognized, loss-shaping choices like her mother's flight. A low chime from the dashboard, proximity alert. Kenji cursed softly, easing into a shadowed side street lined with shuttered warehouses, their corrugated walls dripping from the eaves. Trailing lights, 2 blocks back. Sedan, no plates visible. False alarm or botched escort. He killed the engine, the sudden quiet amplifying the rain's patter on the roof and the distant hum of a generator from a nearby loading dock. Sato radioed the convoy ahead, voice clipped. "Hold position. We're dark." Ji-yeon peered through the tinted glass, heart thudding. The alleys chilled, seeping in despite the heater's faint whir. Headlights swept the far end, slow and deliberate, illuminating puddles that reflected the overcast moon like shattered mirrors. Kenji's hand brushed her arm, protective, not possessive this time, as he drew a compact pistol from the glove box, its matte finish dull under the dim interior light. "Stay low. If it's in Nagawa, they probe weak points. Us separated from the main detail. No graphic standoff, just the tense calculus of criminal logistics. Angles, exits, the institutional limits of hired security." The sedan crept closer, engine a muffled purr, then paused at the alley mouth, its high beams cutting through the mist like searchlights. A figure emerged briefly, silhouette against the glow, phone to ear, before retreating. No advance, no shots, just observation, the watchers melting back into the urban sprawl. False alarm. Kenji exhaled, holstering the weapon as the taillights faded. Amateurs, probably low-level Inagawa scouting jammed by our route, but it confirms the leak. That code in the ledger? It's internal. One of the vets knows the rotations. He restarted the engine, pulling out with a gravel crunch, the SUV merging seamlessly into traffic again. Ji-yeon sank back, the brush with danger sharpening her resolve. This code of yours, Takashi's, it's why you protect me, or just another asset to guard. Her words hung, probing the push-pull between his loyalty and her independence. Kenji's eyes softened fractionally in the mirror, the first crack in his armor. Both. He lost Eriko to silence, vowed no more ghosts. But you're not walking blind into this. The docks tomorrow, full sweep. We expose the turncoat, or the shipments bleed us dry. They arrived at a safe house on the river's quieter bend, a nondescript high-rise overlooking the water, its lobby guarded by discreet cameras whirring softly. The elevator hummed upward, depositing them in a sparsely furnished suite. Minimalist furniture, reinforced windows with blackout shades, the faint ozone of surveillance tech humming from hidden panels. Sato spread the ledger on a glass table, cross-referencing it with a laptop's glow. Shipping manifests syncing to a secure server, access codes blinking in red. The behavioral tell, one guard, Minho, switched shifts last month. Dialect from Jeju like Halmioni. Intercepted texts on a burner, vague, but blossom watch twice. Ji-yeon paced the carpet, the river's lap audible through the glass, a rhythmic underscore to the unraveling. Partial discovery, the threat organized, internal betrayal festering like rot in the holds. Kenji poured barley tea from a thermos, handing her a cup, its warmth a small anchor amid the chill. Takashi's past loss shapes this. A rival's blade in '98 took his brother. Code born from that, no innocence but trust, earned in blood. His voice carried a rare vulnerability, the underboss's mask slipping, revealing the man bound by the same fears. Ji-yeon's fingers tightened around the cup, loyalty warring with suspicion, the birthmark a quiet pulse under her sleeve. The safe house felt like a limbo, protection's cost exposure, her life mapped in ledgers, autonomy traded for safety. As midnight tolled from a distant clock tower, a soft buzz from Sato's radio, intercepted message, garbled but clear. Extraction at dawn, East Pier, the daughter confirms. From Minho's line. Kenji's face hardened, the room's shadows deepening. Was it a trap for them, or Halmioni's endgame? Ji-yeon stared at the river below, its currents hiding who knows what depths, wondering if the true turncoat was closer than the docks, and whether dawn would bring allies or the blade that finally cut the family tie. Dawn crept over the Han River like a hesitant thief, the sky bleeding from ink black to bruised purple, casting the safe house windows in a watery glow. Ji-yeon hadn't slept. The suite's reinforced silence broken only by the river's ceaseless murmur and the occasional whir of a camera lens adjusting in the walls. The intercepted message burned in her mind. Extraction at dawn, East Pier, the daughter confirms. A snare or a signal? Kenji paced the glass table, his shadow slicing across the ledger's open pages, while Sato hunched over the laptop, fingers flying across keys to trace the burner's origin. The air hung heavy with stale barley tea and the faint, oily scent of the river seeping through the vents, a reminder that safety was as illusory as the fog rolling in from the water. Minho's line, Sato confirmed, his voice a low rasp, glasses reflecting the screen's blue flicker. Pings to a Jeju tower, then bounces to Busan. Halmione's relay, same as the warehouse jammer. But the code's off. 729 flipped to 927. Deliberate misdirection? Kenji stopped pacing, leaning over the table, his tattooed knuckles drumming once, a tell of restrained fury. Or a plea. If he's turning, why tip us? We go to the pier, sweep it clean. Takashi's code. Verify before striking. No innocence, but betrayal's a blade we cut out. His eyes met Ji-Yon's. The possessiveness tempered now by shared vigilance, a fragile bridge over her churning doubts. Autonomy screamed for her to flee, to the restaurant, to sketches and normalcy, but the blood tie pulled, loyalty to a mother's ghost outweighing fear. Ji-Yon nodded, slipping into a borrowed jacket from the safe-house closet, its wool rough against her skin, carrying the faint musk of previous occupants. I'm in, but if it's a trap, we walk away, no heroes. Kenji's lips twitched, almost a smile. Deal. Convoy leaves in 10. You ride with me. The elevator descent was swift, depositing them in the underground garage where 3 SUVs idled, engines humming like guarded secrets, headlights cutting through the concrete gloom. Security details, 4 men in dark coats, earpieces glinting, nodded curtly, their radios crackling with guard rotations. Alpha on point, Bravo flanks, eyes on East Pier cams. The convoy merged into the pre-dawn traffic, weaving through Seoul's awakening veins, empty boulevards flanked by shuttered high-rises. The river's edge, a ribbon of sodium lights reflecting off puddles from the night's drizzle. Ji-Yon gripped the door handle, the leather cool and worn, watching the mirrors for trailing shadows. Kenji drove in silence at first, the dashboard's glow illuminating the scar on his jaw, a remnant of a past skirmish, unspoken but shaping his code. Your mother, he said finally, voice cutting through the engine's purr, saved us in that 92 raid, slipped the access code via a burner drop in a Yokohama cafe, cost her everything. Takashi never forgot, vowed protection for her line. That's why this feels like possession. It's duty. She glanced at him, the city light streaking across his profile, human conflict etching lines of tension. Duty or control? I didn't ask for this legacy. Debts, watchers, fires in warehouses. My ethics don't bend for shipments that arm the wrong hands. Kenji's grip tightened on the wheel, but his tone softened, the push-pull evident. We adapt the code. Rare Earths fund clinics in Osaka, not just guns, but rivals twist it. Inagawa floods markets with fakes, starves the lines. Trust me to balance it, or walk now. The words hung. Testing bonds forged in the penthouse's storm, her independence warring with the allure of found family. The East Pier emerged from the mist, a stretch of weathered concrete jutting into the Han like a forgotten arm, flanked by derelict warehouses with rusted cranes swaying gently in the breeze. Barges loomed in the water, their hulls groaning against moorings, the air sharp with brine and diesel, undercut by the low buzz of generators from a nearby power station. The convoy fanned out, SUVs parking in a loose perimeter, guards deploying with practiced efficiency, 2 to the water's edge, scanning for speedboats, others checking access codes on a chain-link gate that creaked open with a metallic whine. No overt threats, just the fog's embrace, muffling footsteps and the lap of waves against pilings. Kenji led Ji-Yon and Sato toward the main warehouse, a squat building with fogged windows and a side door ajar, its lock tampered, scratches fresh around the hasp. Minho's post, Kenji murmured, drawing his pistol low, the matte barrel catching a sliver of dawn light. Inside, the space echoed with emptiness. Stacked crates labeled textiles, the floor gritty with salt residue, air thick with the musty tang of damp wood. Fluorescent strips flickered overhead, casting jittery shadows that danced like elusive figures. Sato pulled a tablet, syncing to the pier's cams. Grainy feeds showing empty docks, but one angle glitched, static, then a brief flash of movement near a loading ramp. "Compromised feed," Sato whispered, tracing a cable along the wall to a junction box, its panel loose. Inside, a cheap signal jammer hummed faintly, wires jury-rigged to the power line. Common tech, bought off any black market stall in Itaewon. Amateur install, but effective. Blackout imminent if we don't cut it. Kenji nodded, holstering his weapon to pry the device free, sparks spitting as he disconnected it. The light steadied, but a distant thud echoed from the back. Pallet shifting or footsteps? Ji-yon's heart raced, the environment turning hazardous, fog seeping under the door, carrying the chill of the river, jamming visibility like a deliberate veil. They advanced, Kenji signaling silence, his radio whispering updates, clear on water, no visuals. But as they rounded a corner, the partial discovery hit, a ledger propped on a crate, open to a fresh page. Blossom extraction, daughter at pier. Min-ho confirms turnover. Below, a scrawled note in Korean, Halmioni pays double, Inagawa safe passage. Betrayal confirmed, the guard's hand trembling in the ink's uneven flow. "He's the link," Ji-yon breathed, fingers brushing the paper, its edges damp from the mist. "Turned for money, Jeju debts maybe, but why me as bait?" Before Kenji could respond, the warehouse plunged into shadow. A blackout, generators failing with a sputter, emergency strips glowing red along the baseboards. The air grew heavier, ozone sharp from overloaded circuits. The fog now a choking haze inside. Distant shouts from the guards outside, radios crackling. "Contact! East flank, 2 vehicles inbound." Tires screeched on gravel, engines revving like predators closing in. No storm this time, just institutional sabotage, a flipped switch in the power station, natural causes twisted by human hands. Kenji grabbed Ji-yon's wrist, not possessive but urgent, pulling her toward a side exit as flames whooshed from a corner, a staged fire fed by accelerant on the crates, orange light licking the gloom. "Diversion again! Convoy extract, now!" Sato snatched the ledger, coughing as smoke billowed, the acrid bite stinging eyes and throats. They burst into the pier's chill, the river's wind whipping fog into veils, taillights piercing the murk. Unmarked vans blocking the gate, figures detaching. Inagawa low levels, faces masked, advancing with calculated menace. No graphic clash, just the race against time. Guards forming a line, radios barking coordinates. The water's edge a hazardous drop if exits jammed. Kenji shoved Ji-yon toward the waiting SUV, its door yawning open, engine roaring. "Get in! Takashi's code holds!" But as she dove inside, a shot cracked the air, suppressed, pinging off the concrete, forcing the convoy to peel out in a spray of gravel. Min-ho emerged from the shadows, hands raised but too late. One of the Inagawa grabbed him, dragging him back into the warehouse as flames roared higher. Sacrifice or exposure? The vans pursued briefly, headlights weaving through the fog-shrouded roads, but the convoy's evasion route, alleys and underpasses, shook them. Institutional limits of rival pursuit, evident in their fading taillights. Back in the speeding SUV, breath ragged, Ji-yon clutched the stolen ledger page. The revelation sinking in, the threat organized, Min-ho's turn the cost of victory. But deeper leaks lingered. Kenji's hand found hers briefly, trust forged in the inferno, yet suspicion shadowed his eyes. Was Halmioni the puppet master, or another pawn in a larger game? As the river receded and the city lights beckoned, Ji-yon wondered if the true turncoat waited in the tower's heart, and whether the next dawn would demand a steeper price for the family she was beginning to claim. If this tale already has you hooked, hit the like button. It helps us bring more hidden stories to light. The SUV barreled through Seoul's labyrinthine underpasses, the Han River's fog-cloaked banks, a fleeting blur in the side mirrors, its dark waters whispering of secrets swallowed whole. Ji-yon's fingers dug into the leather seat. The ledger page crumpled in her lap like a confession too heavy to hold. The blackout at the pier had been no accident. Power lines cut at the station. A sabotage as precise as the codes in the manifests, leaving Minho's betrayal exposed, but the web's heart still pulsing. Kenji's profile was etched in the dashboard's glow, his eyes scanning the rear view with the intensity of a man who'd lost too much to shadows. "Towers lockdown," he said, voice gravel over the engine's hum. "Sato, ping the detail. Full sweep on entry. If the leak's deeper, we route it now." Sato nodded from the front, his tablet screen casting erratic light on his wire-rimmed glasses, fingers tapping out encrypted bursts. The air inside the vehicle thickened with the river's brine seeping through the vents, mingling with the faint char of warehouse smoke on their clothes. Ji-yon's mind raced. Halmione's sprint into the gloom. Minho's scrawled note promising safe passage. Pawns in a game where the Inagawa orchestrated from afar, but the internal rot gnawed deeper. Trust versus suspicion clawed at her, the birthmark a heated brand under her sleeve, autonomy fracturing under the weight of this unearthed blood. Takashi's code, no innocence harmed, promised protection, yet it chained her to a world of rotations and relays, where every glance felt like surveillance. The convoy emerged onto the Imperial Tower's approach road, sodium lights pooling like spilled mercury on the wet asphalt, the structure's glass facade rising impervious against the dawn's pallor. Security barriers rose from the pavement, with a hydraulic whine, scanners beeping approval as the SUVs filed into the subterranean garage. Guards flanked the elevators, their postures rigid, radios hissing with updates. "Perimeter clear. No tails from the pier." But as the doors sealed and the car ascended, a subtle glitch in the lights, a flicker, almost imperceptible, sent a chill down Ji-yon's spine. Environmental hazard or deliberate probe? The ozone tang sharpened, the HVAC straining against some unseen strain. The penthouse awaited in hushed tension, its minimalist expanse bathed in the soft glow of backup systems, cherry blossoms in the foyer drooping slightly from the night's humidity. Takashi sat at the ebony table, frail but unbowed, a fresh IV drip discreetly hooked to his arm, the sterile scent cutting through the lingering aroma of cooled sake. His eyes, sharp as ever, fixed on the ledger page Sato laid before him. "Minho," he murmured, tracing the ink with a trembling finger. "Jeju ties, but the relay, too clean for a guard. Look deeper." Kenji paced, his burner phone buzzing once before he silenced it, the room's shadows lengthening as clouds scudded over the river below. Ji-yon hovered near the windows, the Han's surface rippling like disturbed silk. Barges cutting silent paths toward unseen docks. The push-pull intensified. Kenji's protective glances now laced with vulnerability, his code mirroring her mother's sacrifices. Yet her independence rebelled against the possession it implied. "This ends today," she said, voice steady amid the rising unease. "No more diversions. Who's the true turncoat? The one who flipped the power, synced the jammers?" Takashi's gaze softened, a rare warmth breaking through. "Blood reveals itself under pressure. Stay. We face it together." Sato cleared his throat, spreading manifests across the table. Shipping logs cross-referenced with access codes, discrepancies glowing in highlighted rows. The East Pier blackout, not external. Internal override from the tower's sub-level server. "Timestamp matches a login here, 4:47 a.m. His finger tapped a user ID, S12, his own. The room stilled, the hum of security radios fading to a distant drone. Kenji whirled, hand instinctively dropping to his side. "You? The advisor, scribbling every move?" Sato's face paled, glasses slipping down his nose, but his eyes darted not to the door, but to a concealed panel in the wall, where a faint red light blinked. Betrayal crystallized in that instant, the partial discovery blooming into full revelation. Sato, groomed for years, turned by Inagawa promises of a rival syndicate's rise, feeding Halmione intel through Jeju shells. Human error in the codes? No. Deliberate sabotage, institutional limits exploited from within. They offered stability, Sato stammered, backing toward the panel, hand fumbling for a hidden switch. Takashi's dying. The empire crumbles without adaptation. But Kenji was faster, lunging to restrain him. The scuffle a blur of restrained force. No blows landing graphic, just the thud of bodies against marble. Sato's tablet clattering to the floor. Alarms wailed then, the penthouse plunging into red-tinged chaos. Staged infiltration triggered. Service elevators jamming as Inagawa teams breached the sublevels, distant shouts echoing up the shafts. The environment turned lethal, power flickering, exits sealing with electronic locks, the river view mocking their isolation. Takashi gripped the table, barking into a secure line. Convoy to the helipad. Code holds, no innocence. Ji-yeon moved with them, heart slamming, grabbing the ledger as flames crackled from a ventilation shaft. Sato's final diversion, accelerant hidden in the HVAC, smoke billowing like a shroud. The race against time unfolded in the corridors, Kenji hauling Sato ahead as a human shield, guards converging from side passages, radios coordinating extraction. Triage choices flashed, abandon the advisor or risk the breach. Ji-yeon chose Trust's edge, slipping a guard rotation code from the ledger into Kenji's ear. Override the east lift. 9-27 reversed. It worked, doors hissing open to the rooftop helipad, rotors already whirring on a waiting chopper, its downwash whipping rain from the clouds. Inagawa shadows swarmed the garage below, taillights converging like wolves. But the convoy's barriers held, buying precious seconds. Sato twisted free in the chaos, lunging for the edge, a sacrifice born of exposure, his body tumbling into the void before guards could react, the cost etched in Kenji's grimace. No triumph, just the grim calculus of victory, threat dismantled but loyalty scarred. The chopper lifted, soul sprawling beneath like a glittering trap. The Han, a silver thread binding past to present. Takashi's hand found Ji-yeon's, frail but firm. The treasure isn't docks or ledgers, he rasped over the blade's thrum. It's this. Protection earned, trust forged. Stay, build with us. The code endures. As the city shrank, Ji-yeon leaned into Kenji's side, the possessiveness yielding to partnership, her independence woven into their shared code. Autonomy preserved in commitment, ethics guiding the shipments toward light, clinics, not shadows. The adventure's scars, Minho's capture, Sato's fall, mattered more than spoils. Loyalty and memory outlasted raw power, transforming strangers into chosen family. Halmione's ghost lingered in the river's depths, but the web broke, sunlight piercing the clouds ahead. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales of loyalty, danger, and found family. See you in the next story.